Today we aim to loose the moose. It has been up in our roof space now for over 80 years and we are aiming to bring it back downstairs for conservation, and then it will eventually go on display. We believe it went upstairs in probably the 1930s when alterations were done to the museum, including an extension on the back of the building. Yeah, our main problem is that when it went up onto the roof, lots of pieces of woodwork were put in place after that, like safety rails, gates, etc., etc. So the guys are going to have to take these things down to enable us to get it out of the inside of the roof onto the outside of the roof, and then we're hoping that we're going to have a scissor lift, which a couple of the guys will come up in. There'll be a couple of the guys on top of the roof, and they will pass this over, put it on the scissor lift, and it will go down slowly to the floor. Hopefully we will do this without any trouble at all. Once it's down onto pavement level, we're going to manhandle it down the lane, down Taylor's Lane, in through the back door, down some steps, through the museum basement, and into a room where there is a load more of animal heads, in fact where we're being filmed now.
So, the first question is, what's it called? Now, this is, in North American terms, and this is a North American specimen, a moose. But in British English, we tend to call them elks. The reason we're going to refer to it as a moose is because elk, really in English, has come to mean any sort of large deer with big antlers like this. So, to confuse matters, in North America, the elk is actually a wapiti, which is a kind of large type of red deer, basically. Moose, like this, were once native to Britain. We've had a few different moose species in Britain over the last million years or so. The largest of them was a species called Savalses latifrons, which was about 2.1 metres high at the shoulder and had an antler span of about 2.5 metres. Absolutely enormous. Sometime towards the end of the last ice age, that species disappeared. And by the end of the ice age, the one moose species that was still native to Britain was this one here. Same species that still roams North America, Eurasia, Russia and the Baltic today. They finally died out in Britain sometime in the Bronze Age, a little over 3,000 years ago. Now, we don't have that many examples of moose turning up in butchery remains. They don't seem to have been a favoured prey among Ice Age humans, but there are a few. There's one example towards the end of the last ice age from Lancashire where we've got a great big moose skeleton associated with some bone points. So that moose at least seems to have been hunted. But by and large, they preferred kind of quite cool forested environments, coniferous forests, pine, spruce, that kind of environment, similar to southern Scandinavia today. Ice Age humans were by and large more drawn to the large migrating herds of animals that were moving across open landscapes with very few trees. So that may be why we don't see the two of them in association that much, but they were certainly living side by side at some points. This kind of taxidermy has fallen out of favour with museum curators recently, for very good reasons. It kind of can be seen to normalise hunting these magnificent animals. But there are three reasons we're keen to do it. First of all, it gives you a really good impression of how these animals would have looked in the flesh to an Ice Age hunter that you don't get from bones in a case. Secondly, one of the things we're trying to do as part of this whole project exploring the Ice Age is to get a handle on the history of collecting this kind of material and the way that these themes have been presented in museums over the past 200 years. And this is a great example of the kind of museum presentation that was in fashion in the early 20th century. Lastly, specimens like this are a pretty stark reminder of the effects of human actions on the fates of species like this, not only through the Ice Age and towards the end of the Ice Age, but also today. I mean, the moose is still under threat and its population is declining in parts of North America. And hunting them for sport and sticking their heads on walls is part of the reason that that is taking place. So we can't be blind to the effects of our actions and the way they shape the fates of these magnificent creatures.
My name is Simon Moore. I'm a natural history conservator. Some people prefer natural sciences conservator. Aren't many of us in the country, but slowly our numbers are increasing, which is very encouraging. I do work on all aspects of natural history, mainly the biological side, so animals and plants. I was asked by Worcester Museum some years ago to come and look at one of their penguins which had suffered some bad damage, and I managed to repair that. And I think that's possibly why I'm here today, working on these taxidermy specimens, cleaning them up. The moose head was very dirty, having been up in an attic, an upstairs attic, for about 80 years, so I was told. So it accumulated a huge amount of dust. Fortunately, the pest damage to it was minimal. A few cases of the very commonly found varied carpet beetle, who had been feasting on some of the skin on the dorsal surface of the skull. And there are one or two small bald patches there. Certainly some other parts of the fur had been loosened by them as well, just to the left of the neck and on the beard of the animal too, so that's going to require some hair replacement. Also, some of the keratinaceous, i.e. skin parts of the mount, were dry, particularly the nose, muzzle, eyelids, which required some special partial rehydrating compound so that the skin can then recover and stop shrinking. So it's quite useful from that point of view as well. To do the cleaning, I use everyday household upholstery vanish foam, which is applied, rubbed in, very messy job, and then it's paper toweled off, and depending on the colour of the paper towel and also the foam itself, sometimes second and third layers are put on until basically the paper towel comes out a palish grey colour. Then you've got rid of the worst of it. And once that's been done, then the whole mount is then subjected to a bit of hair dressing using a hairdryer and a brush. Fur is back brushed to get the hot air underneath it to dry it out. And then the fur is brushed back down again and then set so that it's very slightly raised to give it that wild animal look. I've been ably assisted today by Kate and one or two other volunteers who came in yesterday, which was really good of them. They were just about on schedule because without assistance I wouldn't have managed to do this in basically 1.5 days.